All right, so what's the context here? Let's have a think about that. It's 1901. The colony has imported 10 Tikal types from BALDWIN, 10 more from Sharp Stewart, 13 Passchendaels from BALDWIN. It has finished its final Addington Tikal after a production run of a decade, and it's ordered 2 sample locomotives, one from Brooks, one from Richmond, both Tikal types. One was loved, which could explain why it has truckloads of photos. The other was unloved. So why buy sample locomotives? Let's see. I guess there's the opportunity to compare and contrast the BALDWIN approach with rival North American manufacturers. Brooks certainly had a reputation for producing fine locomotives, and they in fact produced the first Pacific type. Yes, I realise what I've said, but there you go. What are you going to do? Also a chance to compare longer cylinder stroke. One of the many things being experimented with in locomotive development during this period of time was the issue of cylinder stroke. It is the sort of technical debate that never properly played out because the widespread adoption of superheating swamped the consideration. As far as our Tikal types go, the Sharp Stewarts, the Brooks and the Richmond stand out by having that longer cylinder stroke. Interestingly, the Brooks had a massive heating surface compared with the Richmond. There's an argument to say that the Richmond was never going to be a success based on its stats. I don't know if that was known at the time, but by comparison with all of the other types, the Richmond was the most disappointing of the Tikal types in New Zealand. Do all Brooks locomotives look that weird? Okay, this presupposes that the Brooks UB17 does look weird, and I think that's fair, it does. It's got a high-pitched boiler and a low-slung continuous running board. It just looks incongruous to my eye. A lot of Brooks locomotives looked classically North American. There are some Brooks characteristics that we can see with UB17. Shape of the domes, the rather exaggerated, quote-unquote, improved bell pair firebox, and the funnel. Brooks did not routinely offer a continuous running board, and the only examples I could find from their catalogue that did were a series of tank locomotives built for. Were bell pair fireboxes common in the US? All of the major manufacturers could provide them. They feature in the BALDWIN catalogue and in the Brooks catalogue, for example. It came down to the preference of the client road as to if they preferred the traditional North American wagon top firebox or the bell pair firebox. But to say that they're not a US characteristic, I think would be incorrect. Were they any good? Certainly the Brooks was. There is an argument to be made, and a valid one, to say that it was the best of all of them. The Richmond, as I've already said, not so good. And this is emblematic when we look at where they ended up. The Richmond ended its days on the rather untaxing Methven branch. The Brooks, for instance, was based out of Timaru, and its branch line obligations tended to be on the Fairley branch, which is a much more demanding exercise than a run to Methven and back once a day. Are there any left? There were, but they got ponzied into non-existence. Was getting sample locomotives something to do with the BALDWIN build quality issue? It could have been. BALDWIN did have issues with their frames, at least in a New Zealand context. The N-Class, for instance, not unknown to break a frame. The Q-Class, the entire class of locomotives, had frame issues. The 1898 and 1901s as well. Who knows? It could have been that the bar frames had issues in a narrow gauge context, because the reality is that BALDWIN built a huge number of locomotives And if they had have been a supplier of dud locomotives on a wide scale, they would not have built that number. Are the people who claim that the Brooks locomotive is the best looking locomotive in New Zealand even remotely right? No, they're not. It's an odd juxtaposition of different characteristics that simply do not work. You have the low running board. Okay, that's fine, but you've got a high-pitched boiler. You've got the frankly weird looking firebox saddle. You've got an overall mismatch of components. The Richmond, by contrast, is better proportioned, but it looks to my eye as something that a graphic artist who knows little about locomotives would blat up when commissioned to produce something looking vaguely American and vaguely 19th century. I think that impression is because of the overhang of the cab. It extends well over the leading edge of the tender, which is why I'm prepared, with respect to these two relatively unclear photos, to conclude that it is the Richmond. What's the newest photo you could find? It's the builder's photos, right? And here they are, Brooks on the left, Richmond on the right. The earliest photos in New Zealand for the Brooks was taken at Hillside very, very early on. You'll notice the absence of the bell. Where did they end up? They ended up over the edge at Oamaru. The hulk of the Brooks was salvaged, but New Plymouth District Council cut it up for scrap as a public hazard, which is a shame, because if I'd known about that, it would have looked really good on my lawn. No, I'm not. That would be pointless. It'd be a 17 and a 371. What's the point of that? None. Is there any footage? Yes, there is, but it's footage of Frank Roberts' model of UB371. If UB371 is so useless, how come Frank Roberts built a model of it? Frank Roberts built a model of the M-Class rebuilt. He built what he liked, and I think he built them because of the style, the aesthetic appeal of the locomotives, rather than any attachment beyond that. And yes, it's time for a musical montage. There's a heap of photos of UB17, not very many of UB371, which is odd. They're both orphans. Like, subscribe, enjoy.